the time of the Gold Coast, and devolving information to the local level was important or has been important since that time. But of course, Ghana was colonized for 103 years by the British, and before them, other European countries had been here, the Danes and the Portuguese and all that. So they adopted an indirect role. And then before then, there was the gong phenomenon. A gong beater would beat the gong and then rally people around and inform them about edicts or decrees coming from the chief or the king. I think the white folks tapped into this. So the information, even at that level, even though their faces would not be seen, they would still, spread information on how they could further consolidate the yoke of bondage they had subjected us to. Technology was scanty at that time. Then came radio. And when radio came and later television came, we got to know more about the need for civic outreach. But unfortunately, Kwame, whether in the NDC era or in the NPP era, we have usurped the constitutional role of the NCCE. Look, the NCCE should be a part of the briefings that are given on COVID-19. And during the time of the former regime, they even instituted a
The Ministry of Information has taken up that particular role as a core duty to be organizing the press briefings. What then do you expect the NCCE to have done in that particular regard?
I think there's an overlap of responsibilities.
In terms of what?
We are heavy on the political bit of communication to the civilian population, and we are scanty on the need for the NCCE to play a frontal role in that regard. And during the past government's time, they had a daily briefing that was addressed by the then Deputy Information Minister. So that was literally taking the wind out of the sails of the NCC. And the NCC was created as a result of our embrace of a multi-party
No, but that is not
system.
the only way of probably say disseminating information. So it is up to the NCC to at least develop its own models or channels of delivering information to the Ghanaian audience, but not necessarily always giving updates or better still giving press briefings or using that same model as being used by the Ministry of Information.
The NCC boss did a great job, and we met at an anti-vigilante round table that was organized.
Yes, I remember they organized something like that.
And then the woman came out and did a press conference before then, which was quite punchy. And then, putting some perspective or context to this phenomenon of vigilantism. The role and the mandate of the NCC doesn't end where the Information Ministry starts. You see, the Information Ministry through the and Services Department, Information Services Department, ISD and all that, should do well and disseminate information, but at the district and local community level.
Through which mediums?
That's why I'm building the background. In 1993, when the NCC was created, we were just coming out of a military regime, the AFRC and then the PNDC. Those times, Kwame, even in the early 90s when we became a democracy, you couldn't just say anything. And editorial policy by GBC was forward-leaning and focused on the population. So the NCC was very loud and visible at that time. But when there was private investment into the media and politicians decided to own media houses, that responsibility was literally usurped from the NCC. So I would rather but
I would want to raise the aspect of the fact that what the media does should equally be a complement to what the NCC can offer to the general public. So if there is an emergence of the media, there's the sprinkling of radio stations and TV stations, that does not mean the NCC should go back and sleep, or better still, should ignore their constitutional mandated right or responsibilities. So why then is it that they sit down and watch the media to do some of these things at a point where they know that they are mandated to do so by law?
At the height of this COVID incident, the NCC came out and said they were so cash-strapped. They had allocated only 100 Ghana cedis at the district level for education. So like is a catch-22 we find ourselves in. This is Uncle Tom that has the role of taking care of the family, But so much money trickles into the family, you think the money should be disbursed in a way that other people will control the narrative. Up to now, in the United States of America, the PBS, which is their public broadcaster, still remains a very important part of outreach and education. And so much as the media has come to complement the activities of the NCC, it doesn't mean we should muzzle the NCC. So politicians take center stage on matters of civic education.
But is it a case that the Ghanaian people are no longer given regard to the work of the NCCE? Or better still, governments of the day, both current and previous governments, have failed to recognize the need for us to resource the NCC to be able to do their responsibilities?
Ghanaians, Kwame, are very accommodating people. They feed on what you throw at them. And remember, during the times of the lockdown, it looked like it wasn't possible. There would be civilian insurrection. But eventually, when they said sleep, we slept. When they said don't go out, we didn't. An overwhelming majority of people complied. And so you, the media, should only be a mirror reflecting the realities of our society. But the NCC is part of those realities. And so for politicians to completely overshadow the NCC and every outreach to the population has a tinge of partisanship or politicization. That is why you would think, okay, instead of giving the NCC money, I'll give it to the communications team. Because eventually when the communications team speaks, it will give some credit to the political party.
Okay.
And so I think it's important that, look, during the time of Jerry Rawlings, there was nothing like a communication team.
From the political parties?
Yeah, from political parties. So you understand. So let's be
But
careful.
the NDC, for instance, under his regime had what they call the propaganda office, where they used to disseminate information, and that was on the party front. But NCC is a national entity. It's a national agency, an organization that is supposed to be financed by the government of Ghana. So why then do we look at, instead of resourcing them, we would rather tend to resourcing political communicators who are party communicators?
Yeah, of course, because when you see Kwame as a party person, everything you say is representative of the official position of the party. So by extension, you are projecting the party. And NADMO as well has suffered the same fate. When NADMO distributes relief items, those relief items are seen to be coming from the incumbent political party, rather than a constitutionally created body that is supposed to take care of natural disasters and other forms of force majeure we have no control over, like this one, like COVID-19. So Kwame, I believe that, and do you even hear of NADMO? You hardly do.
We do hear of them anytime there is a disaster.
Maybe NADMO even doesn't have clearance to speak until you cross-check with a politician.
How do you know that? Because
no, I'm telling you
but
this.
Because they have their hierarchy.
No, I'm telling you this, that before you communicate, you may need one form of a clearance or another.
From
and
which
even
particular
the NCCE,
office?
of course, the appointing authority, of course. Kwame, don't pretend to be an alien in this country. We know how things happen. You remember all the time we say the Electoral Commission is an autonomous body?
Of course.
Who told you that before Afarijan declared Prof. Mills president, he didn't cross-check with Kufuor, former president?
Was that a case?
Who told you before Charlotte Osei announced the results, she wasn't in touch with the former president, Dramani Mahama? Who tells you Jean Mensa will declare a winner in December without cross-checking with Nanado, the president? And so we live in a country that has been heavily impacted by politics or partisanship, and the appointing authority would always give you what to say and not what not to say.
Okay, so moving forward, what should the NCC be doing? Because as we are told, the disease is spreading across communities, and then we do not know, especially our brothers and sisters in the rural areas. They do not have the opportunity of watching TV just as someone in Accra would do, or probably someone in Kumasi, Koforidua, or Takoradi would do. Now, what should we do? Which sort of model should we use to be able to disseminate the information from Accra to the people down there? Because as well, if they are to be infected, they stand at a higher risk of getting the virus because they do not know much about it. And then we are in Accra, we just feel that once we're on TV and giving the press briefings, that should be okay.
Thank God the NCC is one of the most prolific entities we have as a country. The NCC has representation on the national level, the regional level, and I'm sure even at the district level. Yes, but they have complained that they are hugely under-resourced. And I believe that when you give them the resources, you remember those days in the 90s, even though Akobam would come and advertise Akobam early in the morning, but there were service vehicles that were moving around, educating people about sanitation, educating people on cholera if there was an outbreak. We want to see, you know, a rehash of those good old days where the NCCE plays a frontal role. Anything that the state does now is attributed to government.
Okay.
And there needs to be a change in the narrative so that we can change the dynamics and put the national interest ahead of individual parochial parties.
Just as we are doing this one, discussing the public
exactly.
interest.
So I want to see the NCC much stronger. The NCC did well when it organized the presidential debate. But of course, you saw what happened. The then opposition party, which is now in power, boycotted it. And I'm sure if the NCC should come out with another presidential debate, the opposition may decide what to do. So Kwame, you feel me, right? You get my vibe that these are constitutionally mandated institutions that should be able to act on their own. But because our appointing authority is the creation of a political party, their activities are diluted and you don't feel the impact they need to make. I think we need to do the needed reforms so that these bodies can stand on their own.
Yes, but the president indicated on Sunday that they are going to resource the NCC with some PPEs, personal protective equipment, and as well give them some funds to be able to roll out their plans, especially to give civic education to most of our rural areas. And so the question is that when is it going to start? And till what time are we supposed to start? Till what time is the NCC supposed to start work?
I'm happy, and I commend His Excellency the President, 10,000, you know, PPEs, and then he says they are going to pump in some more money into the activities of the NCC. By what margin, we don't know. But the woman is a very vocal and assertive woman, and I believe she has got around her a very competent team, and that will make good use of whatever resource they are given. You remember sometimes past, and the NCC was in the news for all the wrong reasons. And the place of abode for heads of such institutions and all that, the privileges they enjoy and all that. But I believe that going forward, now that the commitment has been made by form of a speech, an address to the nation, and mentioning NCC in name or by name, for me is a game changer.
Okay.
And I believe the media needs to do a little follow-up and find out the things you demand from the state to be able to execute your mandate. Are those things coming or not? Let's hold those in charge. Let's hold their feet to the fire of accountability.
We will surely demand that, Alaji.
When they say anything, we make sure we follow up until...
We will surely